Hey everyone, happy Saturday. Hopefully you're having a great weekend so far. It is going to be really hot today and tomorrow, blazing heat. That's the story from now through this upcoming Friday. It gets even hotter for the upcoming work week. Today also we'll keep a chance for some scattered showers and storms, so that's good. We could see a few cooling showers today as a front starts to work down into the deep south. Besides that, starting tomorrow through the upcoming work week, we'll actually trend mostly dry almost every single day. We'll pretty much cancel any rain chances this week because we've got high pressure that's going to be building back in. Out in the tropics, we've been talking about Tropical Depression 4, and now that's what it's called. It was Invest 97, then it was PTC 4, and now it's TD4. Tropical Depression 4 is going to be impacting Florida later this weekend into early Monday and into parts of the southeastern United States, Georgia, the Carolinas, throughout the middle part of this upcoming work week. So no impacts expected for our area in New Orleans. It is not coming to the New Orleans area. Southeast Louisiana and South Mississippi are in the clear, and we'll be watching it through the weekend if there are any shifts and changes, but not expecting any impacts for Southeast Louisiana and South Mississippi. So that is good news for us here at home. The only thing that we have to expect in the coming days is more excessive heat. There is an excessive heat warning in effect today from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. Feels like temperatures in the pink shaded area up to 115 degrees. So it is going to be seriously hot today. Pretty similar to what we've been going through the last couple days. Orange color is a heat advisory. That's where heat index can be up to maybe 110 to 112. So if you will be outside enjoying festivities outside, white linen night tonight, really anything this weekend, make sure you dress appropriately, light, loose fitting clothes, you have water, you take those breaks in the shade or find some air conditioning if you can. Here's a look at the weekend forecast. Mid and upper 90s for high temperatures today and especially tomorrow because less rain is in the forecast tomorrow. Today, keeping a 60% chance for scattered showers and storms. We could see some steady and soaking showers in a few spots, which would feel pretty nice. Otherwise, it will be really hot and muggy. We'll see a mix of sunshine and clouds today and tomorrow. Tomorrow, only a 20% chance for an isolated shower or rumble of thunder. I think a lot of us stay dry tomorrow, and that's the trend for the week. So that front I mentioned is coming because there's an upper level trough moving across the northern and northeastern part of the country, actually coming down into the deep south. So the front is what is going to kick off some showers and storms later today in the afternoon and early evening. Still hit or miss type. Not everyone is guaranteed to see one, but around 5 o'clock tonight when white linen night starts in the Warehouse District in New Orleans, you may have a shower passing by. It's not going to ruin the night. It won't last long. There will be maybe a few more showers and storms around into the later evening hours and into tonight. Mostly dry overnight, maybe a passing shower overnight, and then tomorrow plenty of sunshine. The front kind of washes out and stalls out. Not really going to be hanging out for too much longer into tomorrow, but if it's still around, which it looks like it could be, there could be one or two spotty storms tomorrow, but less rain is in the forecast with some drier air working down into the region actually tomorrow. With that slightly drier air, it may feel just a very small amount less humid on the North Shore tomorrow, but it's not going to be a big dramatic difference, but we'll have some slightly drier air moving in, but it's still going to be scorching hot and very humid this whole weekend and through the upcoming work week. Now out in the tropics, this is what Tropical Depression 4 is doing now. As of the 10 a.m. advisory on Saturday from the National Hurricane Center, winds now sustained up to 35 miles per hour, so it has strengthened a little bit. Still generally disorganized, but you notice there is kind of this large swirl happening, which is characteristic of what you would expect when things are coming together. But it's still near Cuba. A lot of rain happening in Cuba, actually. Some outer showers, outer bands, if you want to call them that, outer bands starting to kind of impact parts of Florida. A lot of it out in the Gulf of Mexico. A lot of it is out over the open water, but South Florida, the Keys, starting to see some showers and storms work in. At the moment, the Tropical Depression 4 has wind gusts up to 45 miles per hour. It's moving to the west-northwest at 15 miles per hour. Has slowed down just a little bit, and it is expected to slow down later in its life cycle. So we'll walk you through now what the cone has for us as of 10 a.m. on Saturday morning. So getting into later today, early tomorrow, it's likely going to strengthen as it gets over the warm Gulf waters, a little more favorable over the open ocean, open Gulf of Mexico. It could strengthen to Tropical Storm Debbie later today, early tomorrow, and then as it continues to sit over the warm Gulf, it could be hurricane strength by the time it reaches landfall in the Big Bend vicinity. So anywhere from Apalachicola, Florida to Cedar Key. So the Big Bend, Tallahassee, right in the middle there. That would be probably early Monday time frame. So that's what we're expecting here. But the east side of the storm brings the impacts for basically around the Big Bend down to Tampa. So they'll be seeing some pretty big impacts later this weekend into Monday. And even down south of Tampa, seeing some steady and soaking rain, some gusty winds getting into this weekend. So Florida seeing the big impacts, and then those impacts will be spreading into Georgia, parts of South and North Carolina for this week. And that's when it's expected to slow down and just sit here, which is not good news for them. So people living or have friends or family need to watch how this progresses this week to see how long and it will sit, where it will go. Or if you have any travel plans there, something to certainly watch for this week, because there's not a lot of certainty on what's going to happen with this once we get into the work week time frame. So what we've been talking about is that trough, actually the trough that's working down into the deep south, sending us the front today. That's why we're going to have showers and storms here in the New Orleans area. But that trough is going to help pull what will be Debbie later today to the northeast. But then it departs, and then it loses its steering currents. High pressure starts to close in from the east and west, and then that's why it just sits there. Nothing is really guiding it, and it's just going to be really parked there all the way, it looks like, until Friday. Hopefully this scenario will change. It'll nudge off more to the northeast, or maybe it'll sit farther away over the ocean. But it's just going to be days of rain and onshore winds for parts of the Carolinas and Georgia. So that's something that they're going to have to really watch as the week goes on. So unfortunately, that's what we have. It's that time of the year, and as it loses its steering currents, it becomes a problem. It could be a persistent problem this upcoming week. Right now, we know Florida is going to be seeing some heavy rain and strong winds at times. So gusty winds coming with this. It could strengthen to hurricane status by the time it reaches landfall again in the Big Bend area, probably early Monday. So there are tropical storm watches for the Tallahassee area, hurricane watch for the Big Bend from Apalachicola, Florida, all the way to Cedar Key roughly. And then from south of Cedar Key down to Tampa, Fort Myers, all the way down to almost the Keys, basically, right, including the Keys, tropical storm warnings, and then tropical storm watches for the Keys. So west coast of Florida, the western part of Florida, even inland of Florida, northeastern Florida will be seeing the impacts from what will be likely Debbie later today. Getting into the impacts will be felt later today for South Florida, extreme South Florida. Initially some rain and brief gusty winds, and then tomorrow into Monday, that's when the bigger impacts will be felt farther to the north. But it's expected to probably turn into Tropical Storm Debbie later today, and possibly Hurricane Debbie by the time it makes landfall sometime early Monday near the Big Bend of Florida. So we'll look at wind gusts later today. Like I mentioned, later on, Key West, starting to see some gusty winds up to 30 miles per hour, maybe even as far as into Miami up 20, 25 mile per hour gusts. And then we get into tomorrow, it's sitting out over the Gulf of Mexico towards Tampa, Port Charlotte, gusting up to 30 miles per hour, 30, 40 mile per hour gusts expected early tomorrow for the west coast of Florida, Tampa Bay area, even into Cedar Key. And then we get closer to likely landfall, probably early Monday, somewhere near the Big Bend, either near Cedar Key or a little bit further west. And if you remember last year, almost, I guess, I don't know if it was August or September, it was an ice storm. I think it was Idalia that impacted the same area, Taylor County, Florida. Rural part of the Big Bend, but they saw some serious impacts last year from the ice storm that came in. It's just interesting that this is taking a similar trajectory. So again, the path can still change. It's not out over the open Gulf yet, so the shift or the forecast can shift still a little bit, and if it does, then the impacts will be different. So it's really important for people living in Florida, if you have any travel plans in Florida, friends and family, to really watch the forecast closely, because if any little shifts here or there can play a part in who sees the worst impacts. But generally expecting heavy rain for a good chunk of Florida, gusty winds, some potential coastal flooding, minor storm surge for many, and maybe some storm surge up to 5 feet in a few areas. We'll look at that in a moment. So some storm surge, some gusty winds, some heavy rain, and tropical tornadoes, of course, on the eastern side of the storm, the northeastern side especially, as we know that's typical of what happens. So this is what we have, our wind gusts up to maybe 60 miles per hour in Cedar Key. That's when it could be up to maybe hurricane strength by landfall early Monday. And then those impacts spread inland into Georgia, getting into later Monday, and then eventually the Carolinas as it's going to sit. Where is it going to sit? We don't know, but somewhere off the southeast coast. So this is what we have. Rainfall totals, anywhere from maybe 5 to 7+ inches of rain for Florida, so they can see some heavy downpours, tropical downpours, maybe some flooding in a few spots in Florida. And then Really depends on where that system sits this week, but the Carolinas into Georgia can see rainfall amounts up to maybe 10 inches. It just really depends. And again, the onshore winds is really going to create some issues along the coastline there for the Carolinas and into Georgia. So that'll be critical to watch how this storm progresses in the upcoming week. But heavy rain and flooding certainly expected. Coastal flooding, storm surge. This is what we have, the numbers for Florida, anywhere from 3 to 5 feet for the coastal bend region of Florida down to Cedar Key. And then Tampa Bay down southward, 2 to 4 feet of storm surge. And then Marco Island and southward, maybe 1 to 3 feet as well. Also on the western Big Bend, I believe this is Wakulla County, Franklin County. This general area near Apalachicola could also see maybe 1 to 3 feet of storm surge. So those are the numbers that we have so far. Make sure if you live in Florida, you're watching this, maybe online, you definitely prepare. If you haven't done so already, you know what you're going to do because it is coming today for South Florida, and the big impacts are going to be spreading in tomorrow through early Monday into Florida, and then again into Georgia and the Carolinas early in the week, even probably through the middle part of the week too. But fortunately for us in the New Orleans area, no impacts expected. Great news. All we have to worry about is really excessive heat. The dog days of summer, they continue. They rage on. Hot stretch on the way. Mid-90s, scattered storms for our Saturday, tomorrow, a couple spotty storms, upper 90s every day. I mean, our air temperatures could maybe get to around 100 degrees this week. So it's going to be a sweltering one. Only a 20% chance of rain every day. That means most of us see nothing but sunshine and sweltering heat and humidity. Maybe later in the week, we'll see a few more showers and storms around by Thursday and Friday. So thanks for tuning in. We'll be back for the WWL Louisiana News this evening.